How about Colm?
Hi everyone, I am in Rhinebeck and Dutchess County.
Oh, hi. I'm also in Rhinebeck.
Hey neighbor.
Hi. How about Kevin?
Hi, from Gilderland in Albany County.
Oh,
Nice.
no, honey.
Thanks for joining us. Um, how about Katie? Flamia.
Hi, I'm from Clavert in Columbia County.
Nice. Anne.
Hi, I'm Ann Wiborowski. I'm part of Lisa Hintz's core team from Highland Mills in Woodbury, New York.
Great. Nice to see you, Anne.
Great to be here.
Yeah. How about Kevin?
Didn't Kevin go he's from Albany?
Oh, did he already go? Sorry.
I think so.
Maybe that's my signal that we should get started. And maybe our ranks will continue to grow as we begin. So, welcome everyone. We're so happy to have Gay Nicholson here with us today, who is the founder of the Finger Lakes Climate Fund. And this is a special presentation from PCA's new training and grant program called Funding Futures. The Funding Futures Fellows, many of whom are here today with us, are each from a different town, and they're learning to work with their communities to set ecological goals and then to figure out funding that could help support those goals. And so during this 1 year process that we're doing with them, our cohort's participating in lots of trainings and support to help organize community conversations in their own towns around their environmental priorities. So today, as part of the program's training on financial models that communities can use, Gay is going to share how she started the Finger Lakes Climate Fund, how it works, and talk about the mini grants that they provide. Um, and we'll have plenty of time for discussion. So please write down your questions as Gay goes through her presentation. Paige.
Thanks, Vanessa. I'm Paige Wayne, and yeah, we're excited to welcome Gay. I'm going to tell you a bit about her background. Since 2004, she's led Sustainable Finger Lakes, which used to be called Sustainable Tompkins, and it advances the creation of a more sustainable regional community. She emphasizes a systems approach with working with partners to build the infrastructure and social capacity for more sustainable ways of living and working. Gay participates in a number of local partnerships related to energy and climate, equity as an economic driver, and sustainable agriculture. And she left a career in sustainable agriculture to work with in environmental advocacy and education with Cornell's program on ethics and public life. She was an executive director of the Finger Lakes Land Trust before leading the creation of Sustainable Tompkins. And she's been an active volunteer in numerous community and environmental organizations, providing leadership from the local to the national level. So we feel really lucky to have you here, Gay. And please take it away if you'd like to begin presenting or sharing your screen.
Sure. Let's get that going. I just wanted to say I'm recovering from COVID and I still have a COVID cough. So my voice might not be very strong and I may occasionally stop to cough, just warning you. All righty. Oops. All right. Can you see all that?
Yes.
Okay. All righty. Um, excuse me. All right. For some reason, that's right. The controls are different. Um, So, Sustainable Finger Lakes. We're a community-based nonprofit founded in 2004 to support local action and education on the many facets of moving toward more sustainable ways, sustainable and just ways of living and working. Many knew us as Sustainable Tompkins for 18 years until we changed our name in 2022 to Sustainable Finger Lakes, recognizing that system change can't be confined to a municipality's boundaries, but needs to be realized at least the regional level, where our workforce and economy is distributed and our watersheds and our food sheds are located. So we have acted as a connector, convener, and catalyst over the decades to engage both the grassroots and policymakers in the work of redesigning how we work and live, so that our community can more successfully cope with global influences such as climate disruption and energy transitions. It started with a meeting in City Hall back in the fall of 2003, a discussion hosted by city planning about the issues we faced as a society, um, and our potential for being more organized in meeting those challenges. I was asked to carry out a feasibility study around the viability of a community-based organization, and I launched a process of study circles and salons to engage over 200 community leaders in a conversation on the many diverse aspects of living and working more sustainably. This culminated in a Circle Summit where over 100 citizen leaders shared their ideas for projects that would help the community go forward. And it was pretty clear that this idea had legs. So we proceeded with building an organization. One of our primary roles has been convening people to learn together on a really wide variety of topics. Our circles and salons were followed by master classes, teach-ins, film screenings and panels, design workshops, webinars, and a series of regional multi-day conferences on climate, energy, health, and other topics. Another significant arena for our work has been on greening the economy, starting with our 2005 Sustainable Technology Showcase, uh, which introduced our local business community to the many ways to be more energy efficient while avoiding toxic and unnecessary waste. We also worked with Tompkins County Solid Waste Division to create the Finger Lakes by Green website, where people could find local green products. We also helped the campuses and several municipalities form a green purchasing collaborative to get better prices on recycled products and green cleaning supplies, that kind of thing. And we organized the region's first green collar career fair at the local community college. One of our spin-off organizations, which I led, was the Green Resource Hub, which was sort of like a green chamber of commerce in terms of providing networking and education to local businesses over several years. And we launched the Sustainable Enterprise and Entrepreneur Network and hosted green drinks for many years. Sorry. A very important role for us has been to support the local movement in as many ways as we have the capacity for. For many years, we hosted an annual party where we awarded our annual Science and Sustainability certificates to all sorts of initiatives to celebrate everyone's creativity and hard work. Those were always really fun parties. We also hosted Earth Day for many years to provide a showcase for the local sustainability groups. We were a co-founder of Building Bridges, which worked to connect the dots between environmental activism and social justice, both key to living sustainably. We also have organized a column in Tompkins Weekly, a local paper, since 2008, where local leaders can have an opportunity, sort of a guaranteed showcase for talking about their work, their events, their thoughts on our movement. And we maintain a regional sustainability map, which has about 1,000 entries on it in 8 major categories with 42 subcategories so that people can find each other. This fall, we're researching social network analysis platforms to enable a lot more cross-linking and collaboration rather than the static display of the map. One of the major ways, Paige or Vanessa mentioned, that I'm here to talk about today is our, um, supporting the movement with our neighborhood mini grant program. This was also launched in 2008, and it's to provide practical support for folks with a good idea, but not the incomes to buy the tools or the materials they need to get something going. Our mission for the program has been to stimulate resident-based grassroots initiatives that improve quality of life and long-term health in our local communities, promote environmental stewardship and green practices, generate collaboration between differing groups, or create opportunities for leadership and civic engagement. So twice a year, in the spring and the fall, we put out a call for applications to the program. We are designed to be, pretty simple for newbies to fill out maybe their very first grant application. So we keep it simple. And because these are small grants, they're from $150 to $750. And the applications are reviewed by mini grant council of staff and local activists, leaders, people kind of know the community, and to select the awardees and to provide lots of feedback and tips and advice and encouragement to all these applicants. So it's not just about the money. So thus far, we have raised and given away over $98,000 to support 242 projects in Tompkins County. They've been a really wonderfully diverse set of programs, serving various sectors of the community, as you can see here in the graph. Lots of food systems work, and community building. Some designed for low income folks, some for youth, etc. About half of the projects have benefited the city of Ithaca, but plenty of them have also been in the outlying areas in the rural and towns and villages and hamlets. And our applicants have ranged from single individuals to local nonprofits and small businesses. We no longer, for years now, we haven't accepted applications from bigger nonprofits who have somebody on staff to do their own fundraising. This is aimed at helping the people who are, new to it or very tiny and nobody quite knows how to raise money yet. So we want to help those folks first. We really love the program. It feels so good to have helped so many different things get up and running, to provide that seed money to these community endeavors. Some of them have grown wonderfully to be thriving nonprofits of their own, like the Finger Lakes Toy Library or the Feverville, Farmers Market, that kind of thing. And then we make a point of trying to share the stories of our awardees on our website, through our social media platforms, on our list, as well as some other local lists, and we put out press releases to the local media to share these stories. This summer, we started creating some video stories as well to share on our YouTube channel, which you can watch these folks tell their stories of the variety of projects that we have supported over the years. I think that storytelling and shaping narratives is really important to the work of the sustainability movement, in terms of reaching people and inspiring them to either support somebody else's work or to give them the nudge to finally, act on their own good ideas. So how do we pay for that, for this program? We some of our supporters donate. I don't know if you can see that, but that suddenly popped up. uh, so some of our supporters make donations to the program, usually, smaller amounts of gifts, but most of the money is through seeking out sponsorships from businesses or a few key individuals. We have one person who is such a fan that every year he donates thousands of dollars towards the program. And he's even moved away recently to another state and is still hanging in there because he just loves the program so much. But Others have been like AES Solar, which is a fairly large solar farm installer. NYSEG recently recruited Divisions Credit Union, but in the past we had a number of um, sort of alternative wealth management firms, green investing kind of people that were sponsors. And we offer them these sponsorship tiers with various levels of publicity, especially for business, they're kind of looking for lots of times these donations come out of their advertising budget. So recognizing that, you want to show them how they're going to get some exposure for supporting your program. So we're going to be expanding the mini grant program this fall. In the past, it's just been Tompkins County. And we're adding the sort of Keuka and Seneca watersheds by accepting applications from Seneca, Yates, and Schuyler counties. And we're in conversation with folks down in Elmira to find some sponsors to do a sort of Steuben, Chemung, Tioga, Chemung River kind of watershed chapter. And then we'll be working on adding Cortland and Cayuga County business sponsors to have a sort of Cayuga and Wasco Lake watershed chapters. We view the mini grant program as a really good foot in the door in terms of offering services to people in other counties as a way to introduce sustainable Finger Lakes to the people in the region. And it's also a way to meet the spark plugs that live in those counties, the people who want to do things. And that'll be helpful towards growing the movement at the regional level. So, we have covered a lot of different topics over the 20 years, but we've also been really deeply involved in helping to identify and adopt solutions to our climate crisis. These have included in-person classes to help women, especially lower income women, understand the equipment in their house and how to insulate and take care of it themselves. But also an online platform back when we were fighting fracking, created the Finger Lakes, the Marcellus Challenge to help the fractivists actually start working on shrinking their footprint so they didn't look like hypocrites because they're definitely under attack for that. Uh, we had a youth climate challenge that was grants to high school students to do projects, whatever they wanted to work on. And we've hosted a lot of climate salons and marches and rallies and big conferences. And we were deeply involved in fighting off gas pipelines and promoting heat pumps to get us off fossil fuels for heating our homes and businesses. But back in 2010, I was motivated to start our own local carbon offset fund because I was witnessing a real lack of transparency and accountability in the carbon markets that we're developing. Carbon offsets are a way to take responsibility for your unavoidable emissions by making a payment to reduce emissions elsewhere. And these typically go towards projects like wind farms or tree planting. But I wanted to take a systems approach by addressing two of the main challenges facing humanity today, which is climate disruption and income inequality. So all of the carbon offset donations made through us go out in grants to equip lower income residents of the Finger Lakes region with carbon-free heating and cooling solutions for their homes. With these energy upgrades, they can move towards a zero emission home and while freeing up their household budget to cover other items that are important to their well-being. And the result is these lower income homes end up being climate smart and climate ready. We really consider this a win-win-win approach. The offsetters get a convenient way to take responsibility for their emissions. They can feel good about what they're doing with those offset dollars and see the evidence for how the dollars were spent. The awardees get some help affording clean energy in their homes. And our local economy benefits because these jobs are typically carried out by local contractors, local local employees, and it helps them do more jobs, and help cover their payroll. So, who offsets their carbon? Over the years, we've built up a community of people who take responsibility for their carbon emissions as part of their own climate activism. They offset their vacations, honeymoons, visits to grandkids, family reunions, conference travel, campus and business travel. But so a lot of it is offsetting travel, but others also offset their home and business emissions. Say we've had several offset their fleets, for example, the emissions from their fleets for their businesses. Um, sorry. So, who gets the jobs? As I mentioned, oftentimes we are end up going providing the gap financing that allows a job to go forward or to expand a little bit and cover more of the things that are needed, producing more work for our local contractors. Who gets the offset grants? All of our awardees make less than 80% of median income for our area for their household size. And single parent families are the largest category of our awardees, but we also have many senior citizens, young families, immigrant families, and first-time home buyers, lower income people. Uh, we always want to emphasize throughout our work that we consider these awardees climate heroes. They're not charity cases. These are the folks leading the way by getting their homes fixed up and lowering their carbon footprints. And we emphasize that in our publicity for the program. So far, we have funded 112 projects in 14 counties across the region, giving out almost $205,000 in grants to help pay for improvements. And I should mention that these grants are stacked on top of the existing incentives that come from NYSERDA or HEAP or whoever for low-income homes. But it oftentimes is that critical difference in keeping whatever loan they have to take small enough that the energy savings are going to cover the loan payment. So the, the goal is to not negatively impact the household economy by helping them get their house improved. Okay. Because of our success running the climate fund, we've gotten kind of known by NYSERDA and others. We were asked to apply for a big grant from NYSERDA that we ran to try to get to add extra incentives to the existing incentives to help pay for heat pumps and envelope work in low-income rentals in Tompkins County. And we just finished up that project this spring. We also, our Tompkins County had money left over from the pandemic, and we were asked to apply, and we targeted mobile homes, which are a really affordable housing option for lower income households, but their lower quality construction can mean energy costs are 70% higher per square foot. So our program offered some extra incentives to subsidize the envelope retrofits on these trailers, mobile homes, and then heat pumps or not heat pump water heaters, mobile homes, so they don't work there. But that also is a pilot that we wrapped up this spring. So in terms of next steps. This summer, we started pivoting to our larger vision of supporting the regional movement with new tools such as the social network platform we're working on and searching for partners to bring our mini grants and the climate fund into these other counties. Many of the climate fund grants we've done have been subsidized by Tompkins County area offsetters or large entities like AC has given us recently a $16,000 donation. That's the American Council on an Energy Efficient Economy. Or Colgate University has donated, and we've done projects in Madison County. But one of our next steps is to try to find these businesses and individuals in the surrounding counties to also start offsetting their travel with us so that we can help more people in their counties. So, long term, we know that no matter what economic perturbations and political upheavals might continue in the years ahead, we know that climate change and the resulting climate migration into the Great Lakes and the Northeast is a reality that we're going to have to address head on. We're going to be looking for thought partners and leaders for that work in the months and years ahead. And I hope you'll get in touch if you are interested in volunteering or donating or becoming a sponsor to any of our programs. But I also urge you to go to our website for fingerlakesclimatefund.org and offset your summer travels. I was wondering how many of you want to raise your hands, how many of you went somewhere this summer on a vacation, or how many of you hosted people coming to visit you? So we're encouraging everybody to look at that recent travel, go on to fingerlakesclimatefund.org and use our calculator to figure out what's the cost of offsetting your travel. We keep that price, by the way, at a modest $25 a ton because no, even though, the former EPA, not the current EPA, the former EPA estimated the true cost of additional tons of CO2 emissions at this point have risen to at least $150 a ton. But I don't want modest income people to be, priced out of being involved in carbon offsets because it's a way for us to work together as a community, all putting in our, affordable carbon offsets to help those in our community who need some help so that it feels like a collaborative endeavor and not something just for businesses to write off on their taxes or something. So I'll stop there and open it to any questions you all might have.
Thank you so much, Gay. Just incredible the amount of work that you've done. Um, it's really inspiring. And so yeah, if folks have questions, you can raise your hand like Kate just did. And Kate, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I was just wondering how you organized or how you approached, like because visiting the trailer parks and getting them bought into converting to green energy or doing making improvements was something I wanted to do with Climate Smart. And I just was wondering how you did like outreach and how you coordinated the different programs. Were you involved in that coordinating HEAP and like certain incentives? Were you that point of reference?
Well, I had a staffer that did the outreach in the parks. We approached the owners, and in some parks we went around, did door hangers, etc.
Okay.
We also worked with the county tax assessor. They shared their roles to let us know where are the mobile homes in our community. About 25% of those are just scattered around the countryside, so harder to reach. But we were able to do a mailing to everybody, because we had their addresses. And also did a lot with the local churches and nearby the food pantries and places where lower income people might, come across this information. We worked with the Section 8 housing people. Well, that was actually for the tenant program. But we found ways to find folks that were interested in participating in the program. And again, this was stacking up the incentives. And for the mobile home program, the average outlay for the mobile homeowner is only 4% of the cost of all this, $30,000 worth of work done on their houses. So people were interested in it. And all those stories are also on our website and on our YouTube channel in terms of, being able to share some of those stories. if you're looking to inspire your policymakers to step forward.
Yeah.
Um, and what I And of course, the horror story that we experienced in the final year or so of our two pilots was NYSERDA's changes in their programs, really disruptive, huge delays, people drop out. Um, then the PSC mindlessly approving that rate increase, delivery rate increase in electricity, making heat pumps not competitive, not at all competitive with natural gas. In fact, it's a bad thing we do if we get people off of natural gas at this point and get them onto a heat pump, because gas is so much cheaper. It's really, we have shot ourselves in the feet in terms of climate policy in this state. And now recently, NYSERDA, don't understand the politics, has pulled back funding the Low Income Empower Plus program. So what are low income people supposed to do? It's just very frustrating. But meanwhile, I figure, all right, let's just put our attention on envelope work. The tighter we make those homes, the more resistant they are to summer heat waves and to cold winters. And they will reduce the cost of whatever heating fuel is being used. So let's at least get that done while we try to get a new PSC, and new politics around all of this. Sorry to go off on a rant, but it really has been
Oh,
just
you're preaching to the choir here.
I know.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gay. How about Joe? You got a question?
Yes, thanks. And just to clarify, Gay, in terms of what you were just talking about, so you're not doing heat pumps now?
No, we're done with those two pilots. We completed those contracts, those grants.
Yeah.
Now we're just offering the climate fund as usual, and the contractors come to me with a low-income person that can't swing it, so they apply to us. I'm the one that looks at those applications, both for the pilots and for the climate fund. I review the work scope and plug that data into a spreadsheet to calculate the emission reductions over the lifespan of each
Wow.
improvement. And then based on what fuel is being displaced, you come up with the actual CO2 displacement. So that's the math behind it. And a lot of that is um, comes out of the software that the contractors use to get NYSERDA approvals for the envelope or whatever. And then on the heat pumps, we've been using a simplified model based on their HSPF score, which new data from my friends at Performance Systems Development, it's not a very good predictor of performance, actually, that factor that the manufacturers put on their equipment. So a new, more sophisticated approaches will be coming out soon in terms of more accurate predictions for what
Thank-
are the energy savings.
Thanks. I'm sorry. I actually had another question too, though, if I could slip it in. Could you just talk a little bit about the like institutional financial arrangements for the climate fund that you're using a credit union and how do you do your accounting?
Oh,
A
yeah, yeah.
little bit about
So it goes through Stripe, and we have a separate account on Stripe for the online donations to the Climate Fund. And then any checks that come in, we also flag for the climate fund. So in terms of our accounting, our internal accounting, we have an operating fund, we have the mini grant fund, we have the climate fund, and then for these two huge pilots that we ran, we had funds for them. So this was a process I developed back at the Finger Lakes Land Trust, where we had all these huge projects going on, and I needed to keep the money separate and tracked. So we know what money we have for to spend.
Great. Thanks, Gay. How about Anya?
Thanks, Kay. That was a really great example rich presentation. I really enjoyed it. I really the mini grants is really interesting and appealing to me. But I'm trying to think about it. So the projects that we're doing for the Funding Futures programs are kind of at the town or municipal level.
Oh.
And so I'm trying to think in your experience starting it at the county level, was that the right place in terms of reach for getting sponsors and project applications, or is it possible at even like a smaller scale?
Interesting question. So if your awardees are only going to be, say, in the town of Richmond, are you going to convince somebody from the city next door to fund that? And that could be harder unless there is again, there's the publicity value of, and if that town of Richmond is a very lower income in need, community, that also might appeal to a business that wants to, you know, have a charitable street cred, so to speak, of helping where it's needed rather than just where it's beneficial to them. But you might want to, um, think about what other towns, who else is in your county working on these kinds of things, and can you pull together?
Yeah, and that's what I was wondering if like maybe an outcome of this could be like that our county wants to put something together like this.
Yeah, our county, a lot of our success, I think, was because about the time I was starting this, a colleague that I knew from the open space regional committees, he had worked in Binghamton, became our new commissioner for planning in Tompkins County. And, he was a bit of a radical like me, even though he didn't look like one. And so eventually, before he retired, it became the Department of Planning and Sustainability, because he led the way on so many things, and he just was willing to push the legislature into understanding why they needed to invest in green fleets. And he had a green cabinet of department heads all working on, and allies in solid waste and facilities management. So you can really get a county going if you've got
Yeah.
a few leaders. And then it's about, okay, where in the budget can we set aside some money for a Department of Neighborhoods, for
Mhm.
mini grants. That's what the city of Seattle did. And,
Mhm.
those are like $25,000 grants, but very inspiring what can be done to help when it's at that sort of street level.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
But Gay, it correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression is the work that you've done has been not necessarily through the mechanism of government,
No,
like it's been through nonprofit.
right.
But and so I think that's kind of a question that our cohort is they're considering, like what is the relationship here between something that's really grassroots community led
Mhm.
versus something that works through local government. And I was wondering if you could speak to that. Like, what do you think the pros and cons are?
Well, we have a few of our local towns, it's a pretty progressive county, have now got progressive town boards, and people volunteering on committees through like the Climate Smart and the Energy Smart, the DEC and the NYSERDA programs. So, and in fact, I'm one of the founding board members of Heat Smart Tompkins, that the whole clean heating and communities thing was based on our success here in Tompkins County. And our work then was used to accrue points by the municipalities, by the town, to go and get some of the goodies from NYSERDA and the DEC in terms of these grants. So polling, I think if towns work with their local neighborhood groups and volunteer committees, that is a great way of combining um, people power for making change. Now, I know that, some citizen advisory committee doesn't necessarily can't raise money and do grants. They're not a 501(c)(3). So finding a fiscal sponsor is important. A lot of towns would be worried. Their lawyers are going to say, no, don't do that, right? We don't want the liability. But you might find some, more progressive ones really willing to not bog the whole thing down with bureaucracy because a lawyer is, saying no, no, no. Um, but I would imagine you can look around and find existing nonprofits that you could approach to say, we'll be your boots on the ground for the work level if you'll be our fiscal sponsor. We offer fiscal sponsorships to other groups. And then oftentimes they've all spun off and become their own 501(c)(3) eventually. But we help them get started. So I really think a lot of networking is what it might be needed on you in terms of um, and knowing who those board and town officials are and where their heads are at, and if they're willing to see the value of creating social capital at the local level, human capital for coping with to be more resilient. I mean, the name of the game now, folks, is resilience.
Mhm.
Kind
Yeah.
of too late to stop a lot of what's coming at us, including fascism. So it really is about having a strong sense of identity with your community and, a neighborhood-based solidarity, all those good things that help you get through rough times.
Another kind of follow-up question about scale. Like in your talk, you kind of you spoke a little bit about like expanding watershed by watershed, and I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about how does that resonate with folks? Does that bring a greater sense of meaning to the work?
Yeah, I do think that in the Finger Lakes region, people identify with their lakes, maybe a lot less so than some county border in terms of, and the lakes are under threat from harmful algae blooms and now data centers and crypto mining. So there's a lot of like brewing, citizens ain't gonna take it no more kind of vibe going on. If we can figure out how to fight all those forces in court. Um, but I definitely think watersheds are what are a unifying identifier for us in the Finger Lakes. And for those southern counties, the southern tier counties, we're going with the Chemung River um, watershed because it runs through all those counties and then down to the Susquehanna and the Chesapeake Bay. And you guys, of course, have the Hudson River unifying you. um, and that, I think, is a very strong cultural and historical identity as well. There's a lot of cool things in the Hudson Valley.
Yeah, it seems like if you could talk a little bit more about, you spoke a little bit about the businesses and how you probably approach them as
Mhm.
sponsors. They get this kind of like advertising in return, right?
Right.
Um, can you talk a little bit more about like how do you get average folks involved on the donation side?
Well, we have the Giving Tuesday and Giving is Gorgeous in the spring. So there's some online things that are going on, um, that are well advertised. So that, um, and in the past, when we weren't so bogged down with these heat pump pilots, we were hosting lots of events and, asking for donations. It was an opportunity. But we have, um, relied on this individual, for example, that started out at 1,000, then 2,000, then 5,000 a year, donations. That's quite lovely in terms of the grants that we give out. And now we're really, again, now that we're done with those heat pump pilots, it took up all the bandwidth, fighting all the barriers. We want to really be meeting up and talking to a lot of business owners and approaching some of those larger ones like Corning Incorporated, these entities that could easily do a $2,000 a year. I mean, they're doing them all over the place, right? Their charitable giving is quite well known. If you're unfamiliar with that, you should maybe look at your local United Way and see who are their givers, or whatever else is a really popular nonprofit in your area. Finger Lakes Land Trust is really popular in our area. A land trust often attract wealthier folks as their big donors because land is this non-controversial thing to work on compared to changing your behavior and your lifestyle that people are resistant to. But you can even, check out who's donating in your community to other popular nonprofits and then put together an approach. What we would typically do is send an advance email with some simple description, and then, follow up. Usually nobody responds to that, so you follow up with a phone call. We did some in-person visits to wineries this summer, kind of, fun thing to do for the interns, but also, just to be real people to real people. And now that I'm a little more freed up, I'll be, kind of trying to lead that charge a bit more with some of these larger businesses and get them to see the value. We have so many stories to share about the projects that have been done. And all they have to do is read through some of those and see what $500 got that going. And it took off, and now they're their own 501(c)(3, writing their own grants, doing their um I think this Finger Lakes Toy Library is just so fantastic. We've used it twice now when my grandnephew has visited from France. You go there and check out toys to play with for a few weeks and take them back. Keeps things out of the landfill, saves money for low income people. Just a great idea. And we gave them some seed money to get some starter, safer type of toys for their shelves. And that's just one of many. Bike repair, lots with bikes, bike racks, bike repair stations, bike workshops for women to learn how to repair their own bikes. My favorite recent one, a lending library of bike seats. So that before you invest in an expensive, high quality bike seat, you check one out and ride on it for a couple of weeks and see if it works for you. And if not, try another one. Um, these aren't our ideas. This is the ideas of people in our community, and they just needed some money to get it going.
So exciting, all the different ways that you're helping. I'm wondering, of course, it's great to go and find those big fish like the donor that recurrently gives, or these businesses. I'm wondering, do you have a lot of individual kind of sort of the Bernie Sanders model of people giving a little bit all the time who really understand your work?
Yes, and especially more in the past when I was doing so many high visibility um, workshops and multi-day conferences. I just wore myself out doing those, I'll tell you, because I was, oftentimes the chief person doing handling all bases. So then we were more visible. And we used to also, when we started, we for years did a monthly gathering, like a potluck, and provided childcare and, had lots of discussions with people, bringing them along into the conversation, um, dealing with the friction between the social justice folks and the environmental folks, feeling like, oh, you've got equity and part of sustainability. Well, that's our turf, so making friends and working our way through that, lots of relationship building over those years. But I also have faced the reality that everything has its lifespan and people come and go, and great things like the Green Resource Hub, which made such an impact, and then somebody goes off to do something else. Actually, now one of the key person, she's our assemblywoman, Anna Kellis, and Bob, the other key spark plug, is running the New York Sustainable Business Council. Other people had babies, other people moved away. So you have this turnover in a movement that you just have to accept that the thing that they were the spark plug for, nobody picks it up because some that everybody wants to do their spark plug thing, so and the left is kind of famously fragmented in that way. um, but that's why I'm hoping that new tools like social network platforms can help us do a better job at collaborating and having each other's backs, especially on the policy front. One of the things I want to work on is I'm very concerned about the hedge funds buying up farmland, mobile home parks, other housing, water systems. They want to own it all, and want to stick their data centers on our lakes and their crypto mines on our lakes. We've got to find a way to keep the money boys out and as much local control and local economy as possible. to be able to cope with, again, what's coming at us in terms of climate migration. And we have very few years to get our movement stronger and get our another thing is encouraging young progressives to move to upstate New York and repopulate these counties that have depopulated, and bring their progressive values and run for office so we can get the state level policies that we need in place and the town board level, village level, city level policies that we need. Again, this is like a 20-year timeline of work, in terms of this kind of transition. But, anything you do to, retain local control and capacity of people for food, water, shelter, etc., providing your own, that is what makes it easier to get through catastrophe, frankly. And that really is our honest situation is how quickly it's coming at us. I've been in the climate change work since 1992, the first Rio summit. And the predictions then were 50 and 100 years, and in 200 years this, and now it's like, well, in 5 years, it's so much faster. And I think everybody here knows that. So, but there's a lot of our culture that is still in total denial of any need to hustle and make big changes in their lifestyles. So that's where the narratives and the storytelling come in. There's a book called All In that is about movements over the centuries and different strategies and theories of change. It's pretty interesting. I'm still digesting it in terms of our work here. But a lot of what progressives have been doing has been outside the system work, especially here in the Finger Lakes, becoming organic farmers and having really strong farmers markets and, just a lot of relocalizing the economy, buy local campaigns, etc. All that is kind of outside the system, resilience preparation, a few trying to work inside the system, in terms of elected officials making policy. And then, but when catastrophe comes along, then who's ready to, in a way, steer for any opportunities that arise as that unfolds?
Do you find that leaders, or people that I understand you're saying there's kind of attrition and people move on when they've been the spark plug, but are you finding that people you've worked with often I see in different towns that Vanessa and I have worked with, people who have been on the Climate Smart Communities Task Force then get interested in running for office. It's kind of a feeder. Have you found that to be the same for people that work with you or have worked in committees either in the county or your town?
I think so. I think it's been pretty natural progression of people who were in some of the earliest conversations are now been town board members and town supervisors and county legislators. But I'm also feeling like a lot of those folks, are in their 70s and 80s now, and they're going off stage, and it's like it's not clear to me, like the City Council of Ithaca. I don't see climate really. They have a whole climate thing, and we use way too much national press to draw attention to themselves, and then empty-handed in terms of any results. So sometimes it just feels like it's more rhetoric than anything that, and not willing to do the homework, the deep homework of, like City of Ithaca didn't even talk to the landlords, and it's a 77% rental city.
Yeah.
But they announced they were going to electrify the whole place, in just a few years without talking to the landlords. Yeah, that kind of thing, it's just, yeah, I am concerned in terms of a more younger generation folks stepping up, being willing to skip the big paying job or whatever, and patch together a life. That's what I had to do all these years. I have a PhD from Cornell. I could be some I don't know wealthy professor somewhere, I suppose, But, that didn't seem like what was needed. And I think younger people need to understand is that it's definitely not what's needed right now, in terms of, you know, making your own bed more comfortable, because I think those are easily going to be upset.
Um, Gay, I want to go back to when you were first starting.
Mhm.
It seemed like you started with a lot of like salons and workshops and conversations.
Mhm.
Can you talk, because that's sort of like the phase that our cohort is in right now. They're doing this year-long listening campaign. And can you talk about like that era of your work and like what you think was fruitful about it, or what lessons you learned the hard way, since that's kind of where our cohort's at right now.
Right.
Like if you could start over again, like what would you do?
Well, I had already been using study circles as a methodology to engage people as a citizen volunteer on local community stuff. And I had a women's study circle as well. So they're a powerful tool. And it is so interesting to see how they're powerful with a lot of different kinds of personalities. Um, I believe there's still a study circle institute. You can go and learn the methodologies. Basically, everybody agrees to some codes of behavior when you're in circle. The most important thing is the talking stick, the object that you pass around and take turns. It's astounding to me to watch the psychological change in people when they get that stick in their hand and it's their turn to share their thoughts, and how deep they will go in sharing those thoughts, and what truths are shared is just really a very powerful way, if you want to listen to people, to use that structure. The salons were not as formally structured. They were held in all these different restaurants and coffee shops, etc., all around the county. And I put together these thought pieces and op-eds in the local paper as a jumping off point for the conversation. It's like, okay, so this week's topic is waste, or next week we're going to talk about energy, that kind of thing. And um and that was open to the general public. I didn't want the public to feel like, oh, I'm not one of Gay's special 100 people. I didn't get invited to be in the study circle, but everybody could come to these salons and participate. And those many of those people then became regular attendees at our monthly gatherings, became board members, and or got going on their own things. I remember she was the county information officer, and she had been a reporter. I remember having coffee with her, explaining what sustainability was all about, and her just going, "This is the rest of my life. This is what I'm doing the rest of my life." And then she launched So Green. Her pathway in was reuse of fabrics and reducing fashion waste, etc. Very successful, run a shop that pays its own bills. She's now retired. It's in other people's hands. But that I think is such, I highly recommend both tools in terms of finding your partners in this. And the recurring thing I heard in those circles and salons were people saying, I thought I was all alone. I didn't know anybody else shared my values. I'm so glad to be here. Because people can feel pretty isolated when it comes to our culture not rewarding you for being concerned about the environment or the local bird population or whatever it is that you have a soft spot for or concerns about. You know, it's not celebrated and applauded, that concern, compared to, get a real job, those kinds of messages. I think things are shifting because it's all in such upheaval right now with Trumpism and climate, costing us more and more. Um, I just don't know if what our human capacity is for coping with the poly crisis, as it's called. And that's where um, my little mantra is, in the past, um, it was patchy. Some places were doing well and other people were having terrible times. The present is patchy. It's going good in some places and terrible in other places. I think the future will be patchy. So let's work on our patch. Let's try to make our patch be more resilient, have more capacity to cope with it, and not fall apart. Um, like a lot of nation states that are experiencing climate impacts and war and cruelty are doing. So, in terms of any of us have the capacity to be a leader of a big global movement, kind of doubtful. But if enough of us are leading and organizing regional movements, then you have another nested set that can, help steer.
Yeah. Are
And
there are there other regions that have taken a cue from what you've been doing? Like I wonder if like if it's been replicated in other regions.
not that I know of at a regional level. The Nick System project, which seems to have again become a little defunct, was led by Gus Beth and Gar Pelrowitz. He's the Democracy Collaborative guy, Gar, University of Maryland. And they did a lot of white papers and looking, and they all agreed that system change needs to at least be at the regional level, again, where your workforce and your economy is, as well as, the basics of survival. Um, rather than just the city of Ithaca, because then, in my opinion, that's turned out to be a pretty shallow um, claim to fame. Um, I think that we all know that various municipalities and cities are working on their climate commitments and things are happening. It's good. I don't know, um, maybe California, Sonoma, Napa Valley, maybe they have more of a sense of a regional effort, but I'm not, I'm a journalism junkie because that's what my first major. So I'm just not reading about too many, regional scale efforts. And I'm hoping, and we don't really have a regional scale effort, that's the goal. I'm hoping that um, some of these newer tools, these digital tools, will help us in our busy lives with our limited bandwidth, be able to spare some time to see what's going on, next door. And I would like to see the foodies have the back of the climate activists and vice versa when it comes to policy, that it's not just the climate activists calling Hochul's office, it's everybody in the movements calling Hochul's office and pushing for her to finally sign a bill, do that all the time.
Mhm.
Um, and now we have to fight off these data centers. I'd like to see everybody understand what a threat that is, not just to sustainability advocates, but every resident with an electric bill
Hmm.
is threatened by that.
Hmm.
So, I'm hoping that maybe that fight or the fight over HABs and ag and markets and big ag, that battle over harmful algae blooms hopefully brings a lot of regular folks who don't even think of themselves as environmentalists or too climate concerned, to do much of anything. I'm hoping
Yeah.
that those would be ways to pull people in and get them educated.
Right. One of the things we've been talking with the cohort about a lot is, um, how do you draw people in across part in a nonpartisan way? Like, what
Hmm.
is the thing that everybody cares about? Because it's here, it's right in your backyard, you know?
Yeah,
Um, and so
yeah, and it's
if I may say so, Gay,
ongoing.
you seem a little partisan to
Oh,
me.
I'm very partisan. There's
But
no
I'm
doubt
wondering,
about it.
but yeah, just wondering if you have any thoughts about like climate unfortunately has become this partisan issue, but like how could you see our cohort members here trying to, set that aside and say, no, we're talking about what's local. This is what matters. Like let's set national politics aside. What
Well,
do
I
you
don't think you're, and my target is not MAGA. Now, I'm not trying to engage MAGA folks at all because of the 20 years of brainwashing that's gone into that perspective. But when I was the director of the Land Trust, we dealt with a lot of rural traditionalist conservatives and we could find common ground. There was definitely hostile pushback by that mentality that example, conservation easements are private voluntary agreements where a landowner wants to protect their land. So they donate an easement to the land trust to protect it. Well, I got all sorts of blowback from angry old white guys, who were like, how dare you take away the development rights from some future owner of that land? They
Mhm.
felt threatened by even somebody voluntarily, privately doing something and wanted to do battle. So that mentality is kind of always out there. I mean, I met it at 15 years old, protesting the Vietnam War, right? Um, but others could see that it was useful to protect the habitat and, maintain clean streams for the trout fishing they enjoyed. So you can find points of agreement. It is harder these days because of the toxicity of the partisanship. And the Republicans used to be able to love solar, and then they were told not to. And they liked wind because it was energy independence. It was like 15 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. And now it's become something that's an article of faith. If you're part of MAGA, you can't, you have to be against that. But I think there's a lot of quiet, what used to be called moderate Republicans out there, are still being who they are, that are open to protecting their own community. A lot of them like buy local campaigns. They like a strong local economy, and they definitely like home rule. And so framing some of these battles, and a lot of them, they don't like rich billionaires coming in and buying up, our farmland and our homes and ruining our housing markets. And, they're wreaking havoc in our economy. So those are very good points of entry, I think, in terms of local control.
Yeah.
And and local preparedness is and family security. Those are I used to do values hierarchy research, and stewardship and equality are not all that high in the average American's value hierarchy. But if you can attach it to freedom and family security,
Mhm.
then you can maybe come in that door around those values
Yeah.
to get people to participate.
Thanks.
And I just know that the Finger Lakes region has enough people that I can engage to get a movement growing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Heather, you had your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Well, I'm trying to think about how I want to articulate it, actually. I did have a bit of a question, but so I feel like there's just a lot of extremely mixed messages right now. And, you know, you, so for example, our energy usage was pretty flat for a really long time. And now with data centers skyrocketing, so it used to be like, yeah, we can go to renewable because that makes sense given that we're going to a different technology. But now that we need such an enormous amount of technology, we're reopening some of these facilities or giving these facilities an opportunity to thrive again. So for people who have lower incomes, that might be appealing to them because it's like, well, I can have a job again. And for all of our, our young people who are told that they need AI and they need the technologies, um, that are being introduced, it's kind of I don't know, it's a bit of a disconnect. And so you kind of need, I feel like you almost need to kind of match up people from either side who kind of have a really good grasp on the issues. And maybe there you can actually find an equilibrium because I feel like if we're just building movements, somebody's going to be upset about that. But if you're able to actually think about it from two sides and figure out like what is what is the right amount? Like where can we move forward and actually protect the interests on both sides. So I don't know. Like I said, I know there's a question there, but I feel like it was more of a statement.
Yeah, and you're right that there is a huge hype campaign out these days on AI. And you're probably running into it all over the place. And I've read a number of articles about the deliberateness of that AI campaign, of how you're going to need AI for this and that, whatever. So, and that's the industry talking. That is not necessarily, the rest of humanity. um, saying they were going to need all of this. So one of the things that you might want to do is just be able to raise the question of, well, who's benefiting? The industry is trying to frame it, and I know that they're doing this on Fox and other places where, well, AI is going to find a cure for cancer, and that's just plain hype. Um, and a lot of what AI is actually doing is kind of nonsensical and not very useful. Um, Especially if they're going to try to pretend that AI is so much different than the planning and the software and the analysis we've always been doing, in terms of using digital computer skills and coding to do stuff for us. Um, so some pushback about the reality and asking people to think about, to beware of hype, I think is one thing that we all need to be doing. And in terms of this data center proposed for Cayuga Lake, we're going to really I'm busy educating the local community, host community around that hype. And also the other thing is to say, these aren't jobs for low-income people. These data centers hardly employ anybody, and they're going to be specialists imported from elsewhere, the few people who are going to run it. There's some construction jobs involved, temporary. Um, and yes, maybe there are some tax revenue that small towns might be tempted, to say, well, we need the money. We don't want to have our taxes go up. But if they realize, yes, but everybody's electric bills are going to go up, so now people are going to, maybe their property tax bill didn't go up, but their electric bill went up a heck of a lot more. Trying to get people to connect the dots, I think, something that we can do. I don't know that it is possible to have some place where everybody's interests are met. There's a lot of decades of mediation efforts out there, and in some cases, yeah, you can compromise is a good thing and figuring it out. And there's so much possible learning that can happen in the middle of a negotiation by both parties. So I welcome that kind of thing because it's, mutual understanding evolves out of learning something um, about the reality of a situation. I um, but people have to be open, the parties have to be open to learning something. And when somebody is almost in a cult-like situation or has all of their social identity wrapped up with being part of a tribe over here, I think it gets harder to get those folks into a learning mode, where compromise and interests can be met. So, I don't have any solutions for that, but I do think that um, one of the places to push back is on the hype and trying to get people to understand they're being manipulated, and maybe out of a certain amount of self-pride, people will be willing to read some more articles that pull back the curtain a little bit on the hype and decide to not to take the all. But it is hard for people because it's like, but I saw it here and I saw it here. I recently got a book that was aimed at younger generation climate activists, and every chapter I'm realizing I wonder if this author is even real. A real person. Every chapter talks about how AI is going to fix this part of the climate and fix this part. Every chapter is all extolling the virtues of AI as critical to solving the climate crisis. So it's like, is this another? Because I've run across it before on other topics where, oh, I think it was like Trips to Patagonia, books entirely written by AI with fake identities of authors. So that's what people need to realize is that, you're being manipulated into, acquiescence to harms that are coming to your neighborhood in terms of electronic waste, lots of noise, and higher electric bills, and heating up the water in your lakes for cooling all those racks and racks and racks of computers. We already have that problem. And another thing, crypto. It is not regular folks benefiting from crypto. It is big speculators that are the beneficiaries, and it's the little fish that have been, taken for a ride. So that's another thing that, um, you know, is a hugely hyped, kind of corrupt enterprise that's going on. And it is not, I don't think it's radical to ask people to pay closer attention to who's pulling their strings. I don't know
Well,
if that's helpful or not, but
thanks, Gay. Um, so I was wondering if you have um, any other advice for folks who are kind of just starting this journey and and are thinking about maybe, oh, maybe someday, you know, I'll start a nonprofit that will do something like raise money and give out grants towards local projects that benefit low income folks or benefit the local environment.
Mhm.
Um, if that's just a twinkle in their eye, what advice would you give them at this point?
Well, you do have to have some grit and some courage, frankly, and I've always been a bit of an adventurer, in terms of what my life has been willing to take the risk um, and figure it out and, you know, create an income so that I can survive on doing these things I want to do. So you will have to ask that of yourself to, find the capacity to take those risks. But
Oh, do you actually, that's kind of a good question. Do you have a side job or is your income as executive director of the nonprofit?
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there've been lots of lean years where, okay, I guess my salary is less because I have these bills to pay, and I need to pay the other staff. They come first. So it's that kind of willingness to, to both lead on vision and do the chores. So that's just the reality of, what's going to be required um, of us as leaders. But I think that, again, hosting conversations and facilitating conversations is a key piece for finding your collaborators and help in it. So you're not all alone. I haven't been all alone in doing these things. Um, and and we also have been lucky that the Park Foundation, which is a national foundation, but they're based here in Ithaca. And I've known the president of it since I ran the land trust. She entrusted me with millions to protect land and, has supported us all these years. Not all the support, but, a good chunk. Keep it going. Um, but in terms of getting going, I definitely think that having conversations, even at the neighborhood level, to if you're doing listening projects, holding a little gathering at a living room scale is key to, you know, and again, some of those study circle techniques of going around the circle. What are you concerned about in terms of our neighborhood? What do you think we could benefit from in our neighborhood? Um, what is a pressing need? Just starting to get folks to think about themselves as a neighbor. Not so much just what do I need in my family, I need new tires. It's like, no, it's not about that. It's what's going on in our neighborhood. Do we have a littering problem? It could be a minor, so-called minor thing, but it's a way of, okay, let's organize a trash pickup day. I organized this Creek Kids group into doing that, and they've carried on for decades after I stopped leading them. So, there's lots of things that lead people into participation and then investment.
Can I ask you, Gay, along those lines, so the study circle group, and then there was another
The salons. Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about the nuts and bolts? So like a study circle group, how did you initiate that and what were you saying you were going to study? And
Right. We had like 5 main topic areas I let people self-select into. Um, so there was kind of a planning group. There was a greening the economy group. And those were very structured and they met for 3 hours at a time. I tried to create this sort of living room atmosphere at the Cooperative Extension office for us to hang out together and had nice food and snacks. And that's key. Uh, and so we had I have very detailed facilitation notes for each of those gatherings with the objective that by the end of those meetings, they had come up with 3 ideas for projects in their domain that they were working on that they could then sketch out enough to bring to this Circle Summit. And then the local community foundation provided a dinner out of the blue for that Circle Summit, 100 people. And people just, here's all these 15 ideas. And then people voted with their feet. What do you want to go work on? And formed committees. And there was this great committee of artists that had all these wonderful ideas, but none of them were an organizer and implementer. So they didn't get anything done. Whereas the planning group, a lot of people interested in, local and regional planning, they met for a while. And then the Green Resource Hub grew out of the group that was looking at greening businesses. So so those are super highly facilitated and organized, and they're described in the feasibility study I wrote up. Then the salons were more of these wide-ranging conversations on different topics that just help people feel like they found their tribe. And then other things like the master classes, those really deeper dives into topic areas that kind of strengthen people's sense of being able to speak up about, because they're more knowledgeable. There have been so many times I've seen people come up to me afterwards at something. I really wanted to, bolster what you said, but I was, felt like I didn't know enough. And it's like you can always bolster on the basis of values. You don't have to know everything about a topic, but if it's about a value that's part of that issue, speak up to the value at least. Um, so the um, if you're doing listening sessions, maybe advertise it and host it in a popular coffee spot, um, or well, bars are usually too noisy, but some place where people can get some, comfort food or a drink and then sit down around some tables together and have a conversation. You do have to think about not have not too noisy of a place or taking up tables during their, prime meal serving areas or hours. Um, I think that those could um, help you find a crew of people that then could do things like, can we ask the town to be our fiscal sponsor for a little mini grant program? Because we've got a bunch of ideas now, and I don't know how many deer fences we paid for example, for community gardens, because you can't have a garden without a deer fence. And who's supposed to pay for that if it's just a bunch of neighbors or people in an apartment that have gotten permission from the owner to have a little garden area? But they're going to need a deer fence, and maybe, construction materials, and recently, gardening tools for elderly women in an apartment complex. That there's so many useful, handy things that improve quality of life and resilience because, that means those women, lower income, can continue to grow some of their own food and share it with others. So I just think the mini grants are fabulous. There's so many. Um, they can just be an individual who's like, I'm going to make this happen, damn it. I'm going to get the money and I'm going to do this. And we're going to, one person, our solid waste pickup doesn't pick up all the recycling, but they will accept recycling. But, everybody generates in the small amount. So he created a little shed and had all these bins in there for other kinds of weird things that can be recycled. And all his neighbors can put them in there, and then he'll take them when there's a bunch of them. Just a little modest thing because it bugged him, that stuff was going into a landfill that could be recycled if we had infrastructure for it. I just think these small things are encouraging to people because it all feels pretty big.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, everybody can offset their summer travel.
Yeah.
And we'll help a low-income family. Just got approached for one that we've never done over in Shenango County. It's outside of the Finger Lakes region officially, but we can help her, and she's in the Village of Green. So especially if people offset their summer travel, we can help her.
Thank you, Gay. I really appreciate that you came and spent your time with us, and hope your throat isn't too sore. But this was just so informative. I mean, I feel like you've done it all. It's amazing. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
your
And
wisdom.
feel free to just go and look at the websites
Yeah.
and, read some of the stories or watch the videos. There's a lot of videos for the Climate Fund awardees, a lot of those, and some from the installers, etc. So, in terms of inspiring you to also then start telling stories as you listen and share stories back out. People love stories. Thanks for having me, and I wish you all luck on and progress in your endeavors. Let me know how things go, in terms of, making it work. And if you need to inspire, don't be afraid to like share some of those stories of what's happened here with the people you're trying to inspire, especially elected officials, and let them know that elected officials at the town, village, and county level love seeing this stuff happen. They're not threatened by it.
Right.
All righty.
Thank you, Gay. Thank you so, so much. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.